What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. I'm also going to talk about some big news coming out at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. So Tesla did come very close to 440, which is what we were talking about earlier, but then it started to slow down, and now we're just very flat and consolidating. The market's also consolidating because we're getting ready for a huge announcement. President Trump has announced that he's going to be making a very, very big announcement today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to likely have something to do with his tariffs. So, if President Trump starts to ease up on tariffs on China, we're going to be expecting the market to bounce, most likely. But if it's the opposite, if President Trump is saying that once again he's not happy with the way China is doing things and he announces more tariffs, this could cause the market to get a rug pull. So, you want to be very, very careful just to be safe. So my warning comes from this. When you look at SPY's setup, and don't forget that SPY, Tesla, and the QQQ have been moving very similarly. What I mean by that is look at SPY for the last couple of days. We got this big dump, and since then we've been uptrending. Look at the QQQ. We got this big dump, and since then we've been uptrending. And then look at Tesla. We got this big dump. Right over here, we got this big dump. And then since then, we've been uptrending. So look how similar Tesla is to SPY and to the QQQ. You guys could see how they tend to move very similarly because they're affected by similar catalysts, especially President Trump's tariffs and the news involving the US and China. So what do I mean by this? Why am I talking about this? Well, check out what's happening to SPY, and this will be affecting Tesla stock because the overall market does affect its algorithms. There is the possibility of a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. And if we get a big rejection, if SPY loses 665, I think there's going to be a risk of us returning back down to 663 or below. It's not just that we need to close below that on the 4-hour time frame, and we also have to see how we end up reacting to President Trump's announcements. Will we see some kind of big rejection back down to 663, or is President Trump about to launch us to new all-time highs? It's also possible that we just break past 670. If we break 670, we could be going for all-time highs again, and we could invalidate this head and shoulders, and the market could remain bullish. Right? That's the really bullish case. Will President Trump cause us to pump with this big announcement? Does he cause a big rug pull? As of right now, we're consolidating. We do have a double confluence that does suggest there's a higher probability of downside looking at the head and shoulders and the rising wedge on SPY, but we'll see just to be safe. Okay, you want to be very unbiased with the way you go about things. Same thing with the QQQ. We have a left shoulder, we have a head, and we have a right shoulder possibly forming. If President Trump gives us a rug pull, or if we get some bad news by tomorrow, you want to see us fail at 600. If 600 fails us, I do think there's going to be a risk of bigger downside. But if we're really bullish and we end up breaking past 608, we could be looking for an attempt for, once again, the all-time high on the triple Q. So there is a rising wedge forming, and whatever President Trump says will cause some volatility. If we break 608, we're looking for a big pump, but if we end up losing 600, we could be looking for a dump. Keep in mind, there's a head and shoulders, a giant one, and also a rising wedge on SPY and the QQQ. So I say that because if SPY and the QQQ in the market breaks out higher, if President Trump gives us some good news, if he eases up on China or something happens, there's a good deal coming, whatever the news is, if the whole market launches up, Tesla could go for 440 and 445 as our targets. We could be breaking out on Tesla, and the inverse head and shoulders here could pan out, helping Tesla break out more. But if we get bad news from President Trump, if he gives us a rug pull, just hypothetically, remember what happened last Friday? President Trump announced the tariffs on China. The stock market dumped like crazy. So if he announces more tariffs on China or something, you want to be very careful. But keep in mind that Tesla has two gaps. There's one gap right over here. See where I'm pointing? There's a gap right here. There's also another gap over here. So is Tesla about to kind of like break out, or does Tesla reject and lose 426? If 426 fails us, keep in mind there's two gaps to fill below, and we're going to likely fill at least the first one to the low 400s if we end up losing 426. So be prepared for a big move at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Do we lose 426 to dump, or do we break past 440 to break out? I think we're going to likely see a big move depending on what President Trump says. And the overall market could also affect Tesla. Will Tesla get dragged down by the markets, or does Tesla end up bouncing? Let's be unbiased and let's see if Tesla's about to start dumping. Be very, very careful, guys. Nvidia is also going to be affected by this. Can Nvidia break past 185 and be more bullish, or do we lose 178 and turn more bearish? Keep in mind there's a gap to fill down here. If we can't break above 184, I do expect us to return to 180 or below, so be careful with Nvidia. For the IWM, we pumped, now we're rejecting. We're starting to show signs of rejection with this bearish divergence. If we lose 245, we might be dipping to fill the gap towards 237. But if we break past 252, we could be breaking out. Look for a test of 245, and we'll see if we bounce. If not, we may continue to fall to fill this gap. On other tickers, such as ES, be careful on ES because we're going to see if we're about to break out to new all-time highs. If we break past 67.70, it's possible, but at the same time, it's also possible this is a large head and shoulders on ES, and we're about to see a massive rug pull. Maybe President Trump's about to drag us down. We'll see about that. So it could go either way, so be very careful. Look at NQ, left shoulder, head and right shoulder. Do we break out above 25,177 and continue to break out for all-time highs, or do we get the rejection and lose our key EMAs at 24,950 to about 24,650? Are we about to get a big rug pull? It's possible. We have a head and shoulders like pattern. Bitcoin's also starting to dip right now. We're losing 110,000. Could this be a sign we're about to dip to 106,000? We'll see about that. On Nvidia, we're making lower highs. Are we about to break past 184 to break out higher? Do we reject? We could be dipping to 178 as we have a gap to fill. So let's see if we bounce or not. Apple's starting to dip here. We need to get back above 251 to really break out. We have support at 246. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping even more. For Netflix, we're on a bit of a downtrend, could be dipping all the way down to about 1180 since we're not holding 1200. AMD pumped and now it's rejecting a little bit. We need to hold above 240. If we don't, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 225 and then the gap fill back down to 219. Coinbase, it's on a downtrend and tried to bounce here and it's rejecting. We got to hold 337. If we don't, there's going to be a risk of 335. For Amazon, we have resistance at 218 and support down here at 213. We're in the middle, but there is a risk of us dipping to 213 in my opinion. Meta, it's technically consolidating. We need to hold above 722. If not, we could be dipping back down towards 714. Google is on a nice uptrend. We're going to see if we can hold above 250. If we reject here, don't forget that there is technically a rising wedge and we need to lose 246 to turn more bearish. I would warn you to be careful with Google. Microsoft has resistance at 516, support down here at 510. We're in the middle. We could go either way, so be very, very patient. Also, don't forget the VIX is technically just going back and forth between supply and demand. We have not lost or broken any key support or resistance. So we're stuck in the middle, so give this the time it needs and be very, very patient. Where is the market going? Honestly, guys, the market's indecisive. There are rising wedges on SPY and the QQQ. The QQQ also has a gap at 602, so we're going to see if we dip or bounce. It could go either way. And if the market gets the rug pull thanks to President Trump's speech or his announcements, that could cause the market to dump and that could cause Tesla to dump with it. But if the whole market bounces, that could also help Tesla bounce. So we'll see which way we end up going. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening and peace out.